Unit 3, politics. We're talking democracy, but this is not your middle school democracy lesson. We're going to get weird, controversial, push the limits of acceptable conversation. Human beings are social creatures. We can be very good and love and kind. We can also be bad, lie, cheat, steal. And when that happens, we need some rules to make sure people don't lie, cheat, and steal. Someone has to enforce those rules. So thus we, throughout time, have created governments to make rules, enforce rules, because in our nature, we're not always good. Children on the playground, they even create rules with the games that they play. It's completely natural. They govern themselves. Teachers create rules, and in real life, groups start to form rules. Cavemen invent rules. Early civilizations make and enforce rules, and we have big governments today. Okay, so what kind of governments do we need? We're going to mainly talk about democracy today. So the middle school part of the lesson comes here. Democracy, from the Greek word demos, meaning people, kratos, meaning rule. The people rule. Mainly the people get together, they make decisions, they vote, boom, it's done. The people write the rules. They rule each other. Boom, done, easy. A pure democracy is a self-government. The people, the self, govern themselves. The people rule. Now this must be unanimous. All must agree. Wait, what? Everyone has to agree? We have a democracy today and not everyone agrees, because we do not have a pure democracy today. We do not have pure self-government. We're going to get to that. But in a pure democracy where the people rule, which is self-government, it must be unanimous. All must agree. For example, if we have a group of people and one disagrees with the decision being made, and the decision goes with the group of people and not the guy that disagrees, he is not ruling. He is being ruled. He is not experiencing the full benefits and pleasures of self-government. He is not benefiting from pure democracy. Thus, it is not democracy. I know it sounds like nitpicking and pedantic, but it is very important to understand as we go further into this conversation. In this simple example, if one person disagrees and it's not unanimous, this person is not ruling. Thus, he's not really experiencing democracy. To him, they could be evil tyrants. To him, this is tyrannical. You may say, what, they all voted and they agreed. Either way, you have to put yourself in the shoes of that man who now is no longer ruling and being ruled upon. Is this the government he wants? Is this the society he wants? Is he experiencing pure democracy, or is he experiencing tyranny? Sounds like an exaggeration, but you can understand the point. He's not ruling. It's not democracy. So as groups get bigger, unanimous decisions become impossible. One, it's very hard to get everyone to agree. Two, there are all kinds of logistical problems with getting a group of 100, 500. If you have a group of 300 million people, how do you even get them all together to vote and then get all 300 million together and vote and have them make a unanimous decision? Obviously, it is impossible. And there are all kinds of logistical nightmares in trying to get a unanimous decision. It's hard to get a unanimous decision just in a household alone. And thus, to preserve this democracy, we have to adulterate it to a point. Change it around. Change what it is. We say democracy and say that the people rule. That's the definition. And then we start adding new rules logistically to make it work, but we don't change our regular definition. We don't change, well, the people rule. Well, the people ruled when we had the basic form up here. This was the people ruling. Then we changed some of the rules. Maybe we should change the definition and not keep pretending that it's a pure democracy or democracy. Shouldn't we come up with a new word? And in some ways we do come up with new words to describe it, but that's not often the case. So let's talk about some new rules. And what are the big new rules that you'll get in a direct democracy? There it is. We changed the word. Now we're calling it a direct democracy. Sure. But unfortunately, often people still just say democracy. Anyway, new rule. For logistic purposes, because we got to get things moving. We got to make decisions. We can't wait on a unanimous decision. And even if we waited on it, there's no guarantee that we could ever get it. So new rule, change to democracy, because we've got to make this thing work. It's majority rule. Most votes wins. That's how we'll make decisions. But wasn't that the problem before where the guy, he was the lone vote against and he got ruled over? Yeah. And he didn't get to experience really democracy, did he? Well, experiencing democracy doesn't mean you always get what you want. Well, sort of, kind of. Self-government means you get what you want. Self-govern. I govern. I get what I want. Well, it's just not possible. Yep, we're going to get to that. So again, if you're in the majority, boom, you get to have the decision. Awesome, pretty simple. We added a new rule just to make things work. Yes, we did, but you kind of changed your original principles. You changed your original beliefs. Now let's go deeper. Let's blow minds. Let's go crazy. Let's get controversial. Put on your thinking caps. Now, if you just absorb the middle school part of the lesson, good job. Congratulations. You know a good idea of democracy. If we get a little too out there, it's completely okay. So let's get out there. So let's talk about majority rule, meaning you have more votes than the other group. You are in the majority, more than the less. We could also call this the mini rule. So this is not self-government. This is a system of the many. The more rule, the few do not rule. The less do not rule. That is not self-government. Thus, that is not really democracy in the purest sense. And we're just saying this to get a better understanding of what democracy is and isn't. So let's just follow along. We could also say mob rule. What? That's an exaggeration. I can follow you with mini rule, but now you're saying it's mob rule. That's just stuff you see in TV shows and movies where the angry mob gets what they want. Is it really? Because I can tell you a couple times in American history and throughout the world where the mob, the angry mob, with the numbers, with the many, got what they wanted, and the few and the less had to go along with what the mob said. That is the democracy you have today. It is not a pure democracy where we have unanimous decisions, where we make laws and policy based on what we all agree upon. Again, logistically, it's impossible to get 300 million people to all agree, but you do have to understand that it is okay and completely American to question democracy in terms of maybe making democracy better or maybe making self-government better. A lot of this is a logistics issue. Logistics coming from the word logic, reasoning. Early civilizations, as they expanded, ran into problems with their pure democracy because unanimous decisions weren't possible for many, many reasons. So they had to think things through. It's very complex. So again, logistics, careful organization of a complicated activity to ensure success and effectiveness. So this is a logistics issue. How do you make democracy work, especially as groups get bigger, especially as groups become more diverse? You have to make some changes, you have to adjust the system, and you have to take pure democracy and adulterate it. You have to dilute it. You have to water it down. You have to abandon some of your principles. Not because you want to, not because you want to, because it's just necessary. So again, we agree that we can't all agree. It's impossible to get 300 million people to agree. It's impossible to get probably 10,000 people to agree. One, just from your human mindset. Two, what are you going to do? Show up at a giant arena, Madison Square Garden, and we're going to have a giant vote? You're going to fit all of America into one giant stadium? Even if there was only 100,000 people in this country, you're going to put them into a football field and we're all going to vote, and then we're going to wait till we can unanimously. It can't work. So what we have to do is create rules to make sure things are working. Adjust the machine. Adjust the system. We have to tinker. And if every little tinker we do, that pure democracy becomes more watered down. Unfortunately, in our minds, we still believe we have a pure democracy. We still see democracy as this beautiful, perfect system. But the reality is, as we have tinkered and added new rules, we have changed that system. And that's okay and that's fine. But we have to accept that and realize that. Because if we do accept that we have tinkered with the machine, we have changed the system from its purest form, from its philosophical, ideological concept. If we see it as a system, then we can fix that system. So a new rule, majority rule, most votes wins. Let's think more about this philosophically. And as we break it down, we can see some of the flaws with the goal of how can we make it better? How can we make America better? So what we have here is the majority being 51%. The 51 rules the 49. The 49 do not rule. They are not experiencing self-government, thus they are not experiencing democracy. No, you say, they got to vote. Well, voting is not really democracy. It is something that we have thrown in. Sure, they got to have some say. They got to have some speech. I get it. But let's just boil it down to our a priori assumption, our basic fundamentals of democracy, which is people rule. Those 49 people, are they writing the rules? No, they did not. The 51 wrote the rule. The 51 decided the government policy. The 49 did not. Well, they had a chance. Democracy doesn't mean you get a chance. It means you get to rule. The 51 are ruling the 49, but they had a chance. So this is really a framing issue. We've got to start looking at it differently so that then we can understand the system. Remember, look at democracy more as a system than rather a concept or a belief. If we look at this system differently, we can make it better and thus make America better. The first thing we have to understand is that when we look at it as a belief or a concept and we love it and we hold it sacred, we often don't question it enough. If we look at it as more of a system, or we look at it as a machine, a computer, then we can start questioning, is it working at its best? Could we make it better? And I know at the very beginning, we said, well, when you tinkered with it in the beginning, you made it worse. We ended up with less self-government. That's true. So maybe we pull back some of that tinkering. I don't know, but we need to have the conversation. And the only way you have that conversation or discussion is if you see it as a system and you do not hold democracy as the sacred belief or principle or concept. It's a system. It's a system of government. And if we do that, then maybe we can fix it. And then maybe we can make America bigger. So the first step in helping us frame the issue of democracy or self-government is stop saying democracy. Because when we say democracy, we think of a concept. We think of a belief, a sacred value. And that frames it in the wrong way, and it's harder to see it as a system. You want to see it as a system, as a program, as a computer, as a machine. Let's just start saying the American self-government. Our self-government. Because that always pulls it back into the frame of, am I ruling? Is the self ruling? That makes it more pragmatic, less abstract, less like some sort of belief out in thin air in the ether, and more like a concrete thing, self-governing, the American self-government. Can we make the American self-government better? Can we make America more of a self-government where you rule, where you're making the decisions and no one is making decisions for you? When you say democracy, it's easier to allow others to rule you. It is a little easier to allow others to have control. You concede it. But if you always frame it as self-government, then it always brings it back to, am I really getting what I want to do? Can we get away from the 51 ruling the 49? So, going further into that, to help you understand this framing issue, let's ask ourselves, in the America that we live in, is this self-government? 51 ruling 49, is that truly self-government? Obviously, it's not. And I get it, it's a logistics issue where you have to have majority rule. And we have to have some sort of way to make decisions. And we'll get further into that. But we also have to admit at the same time, we have to admit at the same time, that it's not truly self-government. It may be democracy as this concept that we have learned to believe and love, but it is not self-government. Let's throw another one out there to further blow some minds. 17-year-olds can't vote. They do not rule. Are they experiencing democracy? Yeah, well, it's just the way the game works. Now, when I say, are they experiencing self-government? You cannot argue with that. No, they are not ruling at all. They are governed. They have to follow all the rules, laws, and policies of the nation. When you look at it as a democracy, this abstract concept, this belief, then yeah, sure, 17-year-olds are fine. But when you ask, are they experiencing self-government in America? No, they're not. They are ruled over and have no say. And worse than that, 18-year-olds get to self-rule to an extent, much more. Now, they still have to experience the old 51, 49, but at least 18-year-olds get to vote. And now I'm sure this is the moment where you say, well, 18-year-olds have a right to self-rule because 18-year-olds can be conscripted because of the draft. They can be forced to fight in a war. Thus, if you have to go fight in a war, you should have some say in that war. Okay, 18-year-old men experience self-government. 17-year-old men do not. I follow your logic. But what about women? Why do 18-year-old women get to vote? They cannot be conscripted. They do not have to sign up for the draft. If you want to make the excuse, the arbitrary rule, and this is your rule, not mine, that, well, if men have to fight in a war, then they should get to vote. Cool. Well, women don't have to fight, so why do they get to vote? Now, we don't want to sound misogynistic, but we do want to call in to question your beliefs and your ideas. If you think because you have to fight in a war, you should get to vote, all right, that's your arbitrary rule. Then why did you also create another arbitrary rule that says 18-year-old women get to vote? Well, because it's only fair. Well, if it's only fair that they get to fight, then why can't a 17-year-old man vote? Does that make any sense? They don't have to fight. 17-year-old men don't have to fight. How is that fair to 17-year-old men or 17-year-old women? Why not expand it? We could argue back and forth all day, but in the end, we know that the 17-year-old is not governing. They are governed. Again, every time we come up with a new rule, we tinker with the machine, and simply it's a logistical thing. And it becomes less and less democratic or less of a self-government. And it moves further away from what you see in your mind when we talk about democracy. Every time we create rules or adjust the system, we get further and further away from that pure democracy. And our goal, our dream should be that pure democracy. Our dream, our goal should be that we self-govern. How do we get there? It's a big question. But it starts with the question. If you have problems with our system, if you're angry about politics today, if you're angry about America today, then you need to start here. This is where it starts, in understanding the basics of democracy and using words like self-government. So again, as we have added rules, some arbitrary, some more common sense than others, we do get further from self-government. So you look at America and we say, we've got democracy. And yeah, we have something of democracy. We don't have self-government, though. Democracy, the people rule. Yes, in its purest sense. But in our democracy, it would be more apt to say some rule and some are ruled. 17-year-olds, you're ruled. 16-year-olds, you're ruled. That is a more accurate way of seeing our system. And we see accurately, maybe we can make some changes that make the system better so that everyone lives a better life. If we don't have this conversation or discussion or look at it through this lens, we don't frame it this way, we never make any changes, and you're never going to improve the system. Framing, folks. So logistics, again, let's go deeper into this. We have to change things around. And I get it, we've been pretty negative towards democracy. It was you, Mr. Dietrich, it wasn't we. We're not completely on board with your craziness. Do not throw us into that. I got it. But I agree with you. Let's be more positive towards democracy. Let's be positive towards our version of self-government, our watered-down version. So nothing is perfect. And as I always say in class, perfect is the enemy of good. Thanks, Voltaire. When you try to do everything right, you magically do nothing at all. You expand and expend too many resources trying to get everything right. Good is good enough. Perfect is the enemy of good. It prevents you from really accomplishing anything. So we probably will never get to perfect pure democracy, and that's okay. Or perfect, pure self-government, and that's okay. It's fundamentally, logistically impossible. But it can be better. Again, there's no perfect rules. There's no perfect government, but we can always make our government better. We can always question what we have, and that's what America's founded upon. The founding fathers questioning the government they were living on, trying to build the best government that they could. And we should continue that fight. So let's look at a scenario to help us understand and defend the system that we have. Let's be fair to our version of self-government. Let's say we got 100 people in this scenario, and you want pure democracy, right? I'm all about pure democracy. That's what we started out with. But again, that must be unanimous. If someone's left out, they're not making a decision, thus they're being ruled upon. Well, let's try to see if we could actually do that with just 100 people, let alone 300 million. With 100 people, right? We're just doing a pretty small group. How many hours of debate would you have to consume just to get those 100 people to agree? We're not talking 300 million. We're just talking 100 people. A little caveman tribe. How long does that take? And so we look at the old trade-offs. Where's Thomas Sowell at? Yeah, we'll pop up a Thomas Sowell picture in a second. It's about the trade-off. So if we go this way and we chase our desire for pure democracy, self-government, the dream, Mr. Dietrich's dream, we would waste days debating. Now, ultimately, we could come to a unanimous decision, and we would get to experience all the benefits of pure democracy. But the trade-off, the cost, is that how many days did you wait? Hey, did anyone feed the dog? How's the farm look? Did anyone go protect our homes from wild werewolves and vampires? There's no werewolves and vampires. I don't know. Did anyone work? No, we were too busy arguing for 3 days about what kind of corn we should plant, what the crop should be. And we waited so long debating and arguing about what kind of crop we should be. Months passed and we never even actually planted the crop. Now we all get to starve to death. So that's option A. Not probably the best. Or you go with option B with these 100 people and realize we just cannot waste all of this time. And we say, all right, let's water down this democracy a little bit. You can't always get what you want. Perfect is the enemy of good. And so we're going to create a new rule. It's called my majority rule. Minority loses. If you get less votes, you got to do what the group that gets more votes gets. But we're going to save time. But I don't get to experience pure democracy. I didn't get what I wanted. Sure, you didn't get what you wanted, but I saved you 3 days, 3 months of arguing and fighting. It's all about trade-offs. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. This is a system. Democracy is a system. Self-government is a system. And in any system, there are going to be problems and issues and trade-offs and consequences. Nothing is perfect. No system is perfect. We just try to make the system the best as it possibly can be. It's not perfect. The system's not perfect. And that leads to arguing since the beginning of democracy and now. And one of the reasons why people don't like politics is because of the arguing. And because we argue because it's just not a perfect system. The anger, the vitriol, all of this that goes on in America that we experience today, that we have always experienced, sometimes to a lesser extent, it is completely natural and inherent with even a pure democracy. Now it becomes even worse as we add rules like majority rule versus minority rule. And this is the reason why many Americans do not like politics, because of its argumentative nature. And things become argumentative when they are not perfect. But folks, no form of government is perfect. There are trade-offs with every one. It all comes down to what trade-offs are you willing to accept? Is this the best system? It's for you to decide. But one thing that we can decide is when we have this conversation about democracy or self-government, we can possibly make it better. We can make our lives better. We can make lives better for our posterity and future Americans, our children. There it is. Middle school democracy, no thanks. We're going high level. Hope you appreciated it.